We've all been there in business, right? You hear that word no, and it feels like you've just hit a brick wall. But what if? What if you could turn that no into a genuine opportunity? Today, we're going to break down a secret framework that does exactly that. It's all about turning those really stressful objections into truly productive conversations. Yeah, this one. If you're in business, I guarantee you've heard some version of this sentence before. And man, it can just stop a great conversation dead in its tracks, can't it? So, what we're talking about here is technically called a sales objection. But here's the thing, this is where most of us get it wrong. We hear that and we see it as a flat out rejection, a closed door. And that's exactly where the opportunity gets lost. This right here, this is the big mindset shift. An objection isn't a dead end. I want you to start thinking of it as a sign of engagement. It's actually a request for more information. Your prospect is basically telling you, hey, I need a little more context here to feel good about moving forward. The problem is, our first instinct, our gut reaction in these moments, is almost always the wrong one. You get defensive, poof, trust is gone. You try to argue your case, well, now you're just creating conflict. You immediately offer a discount, you've just devalued your own product. And of course, giving up, that's a guaranteed lost sale. Every single one of these undermines the trust you've worked so hard to build. So it makes you wonder, right? What if there was a better way? A framework that's actually aligned with how our brains are wired to process information, one that could turn these tense moments into something, well, persuasive? Well, the good news is there is a framework like that, and it's a go-to tool for the heavy hitters, top consulting firms like McKinsey and BCG, and they use it for a very good reason. It turns a potentially defensive chat into a clear, logical story. It's called the SCQA framework. Now, I know, it sounds a bit corporate, but stick with me. It stands for situation, complication, question, and answer. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful flow that guides your listener from a reality you both agree on, introduces a problem, asks a key question, and then leads them right to your solution. Now, the real magic here, the psychology behind why this works so well, is that it perfectly mirrors how our brains want to receive information. We need context first, that's the situation. Then a problem to grab our attention, the complication. Then a question to focus our thinking, and finally, a solution. It's persuasion that just makes sense. Okay, enough theory. Let's get practical. Let's see how this framework actually works in the real world when you're up against the most common objections you're going to face. All right, first up, the big one, the one we all dread hearing more than any other. It's just too expensive. So your knee-jerk reaction might be to just throw a discount at them, right? But that immediately devalues what you do. Now watch how the SQA response totally reframes this. You start by agreeing with them, the situation. I understand budget is a key consideration. Then you introduce the complication. However, the cost of the problem you're facing is actually X. You see that? This lets you ask a much more powerful question about return on investment, which leads directly to your answer. You've brilliantly shifted the whole conversation from cost to value. Okay, next up is the trust objection. I've never heard of you. Ouch, that one can sting, especially if you're a newer business, the new kid on the block trying to break in. Instead of just puffing out your chest and saying, we're the best, which, let's be honest, nobody really believes, the SCQA approach is so much smarter. You validate their concern. I know we're a new name. You agree reputation is critical. Then you pose the question of how you earn that trust, and you answer it not with a claim, but with specific, relevant proof. You're showing them, not just telling them. And finally, let's talk about the urgency objection. This is that tricky one where they agree there's a problem, but they tell you, it's just not our top priority right now. Trying to create some fake urgency by saying, but you need to act now, that almost never works. Instead, look at this SCQA response. It validates their priorities, but then it introduces a new complication, the negative consequences of inaction. This completely reframes the conversation around preventing future pain, and it lets you offer a flexible solution that respects their current situation. So, you can see how powerful this is, right? It's like having a repeatable script for just about any objection they can throw at you. But, and this is a big but, knowing the structure is one thing. How do you actually prepare your answers so you're ready to go in the heat of the moment? Well, that's where a little bit of prep work goes a long, long way. And hey, there are some really cool tools out there to help with this. We came across this one, for example. It's a prompt book from a company called Almost Automatic Marketing, designed to help businesses get their sales and marketing materials ready to go. And right inside this book, there's a simple but really powerful little exercise that they call the objection crusher. And it is designed to help you do exactly what we've been talking about. Get your responses ready before you need them.
The prompt itself is dead simple. It just says, list the common objections you hear all the time, and then write a one-sentence response to each one. That's it. This is how you build your own arsenal of SQA-based responses before you ever even get on a call. You're just ready for anything.
And this, right here, this is the key takeaway. This simple act of preparation completely changes the dynamic. You move from that reactive panic mode into a prepared, strategic conversation. You're no longer on the defensive, you are confidently guiding the discussion forward. Which leaves us with this final thought. What if no wasn't an obstacle at all, but was actually a roadmap to yes? By using a framework like SCQA, you can learn to see these objections not as barriers, but as the very path that leads you to a successful outcome.